Okay. Thanks for listening to New England Horror Files podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about werewolves in New England, Dogman sightings, stuff like that. We're going to wolf out, and we'd like you to join us as I work on my midnight radio DJ voice. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. We got M on line one. M, tell me something about the Dogman.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay. I'm so happy to be here.
That's great.
Oh my gosh, it sucks that you have like the voice and I just don't. So I'm not as much fun. It's all right. Keep working on that midnight radio DJ voice. It's good.
Well, you're good at researching this stuff, so tell us about it. I want to hear you, tell me about some of the legends because I don't know as much,
All right,
the highlights. But
Dogman. Let me pull up.
I hear that. I hear, I feel like it's like Marvel Comics or DC Comics or something like Dogman, the feature film. Dogman, the motion picture.
Dogman. All right, so
you can tell how old we are because I'm saying motion picture like it's the '90s. Sorry, guys.
I know, right?
I know.
It's a film. A horror film. Okay. All right, so let's give a preface to this. I am not saying that anything we talk about exists fundamentally, except for ghosts. I know they do, so you can't tell me nothing about ghosts. But I first heard about Dogman.
I'm not making any guarantees, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie to people. If something happened to me, and I'm gonna say it happened. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like you're the same way. But
yeah,
if you don't believe me, hey, cool, great. I don't care. I don't want to hear about it. Just
right.
Whatever.
Well, that's why I want to talk about Dogman because, and we'll do more about Bigfoot. Bigfoot's a separate issue, but I do want to talk about Dogman because
there's a lot of these type of sightings that it could be really interpreted differently. I mean, who really knows? I've never seen anything like this, so it's like anything like this is. I have no personal frame of reference other than the lore of it.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't have any stake in this. I've never seen. Well, I had an interesting experience years back, which we'll talk about that later. But for all intents and purposes, like I've never seen a Dogman. I mean, I find the concept personally not only terrifying, but also it sounds a little nuts to me, to be honest, personally. But at the same time, I know there's some crazy stuff in the world. So, like, I never, and as much as I've seen crazy stuff and I know what I saw or experienced, and I would tell someone who hasn't had any experience like that and they might blow me off, I don't want to be that person. So, like, there's a lot of stories and encounter stories. And I actually, I started learning about encounter stories, that there was such a thing, um, probably about 5 to 7 years ago, maybe. And I had no idea. I had no idea that there were so many Bigfoot stories. Again, we're not here to talk about Bigfoot, but it was through listening to Bigfoot.
Experience.
Say what?
No, I was trying to quote the X-Files, but I fucked it all up. I'm sorry.
Oh, the X. Yeah, this is like some very X-Files stuff.
Yeah,
but it was through listening to I accidentally came across Bigfoot encounter stories, and I had no idea there was just such a wealth of those.
Yeah,
different. There's different podcasts and YouTube channels and books, and like there's a lot. But through that is when I first heard the word Dogman. I remember the story. It was a guy in Florida talking about his Dogman encounter, and I'm like, "Fucking Dogman! What do you mean? Like, what is that? Like Dogman?" I'm picturing like a werewolf sort of scenario, and I'm like, I find the idea of Bigfoot scary as hell. And Dogman's just like, that's another level of fucking terrifying, right?
Right.
Like, so that I just want to put it out there that like I don't know. It sounds crazy, but at the same time, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. You know what I mean? So there's where I'm coming from, and I'm just willing to talk about anything in the realm of cryptids or just weirdness that happens. So as I went through and learned more about the substance of these Sasquatch encounter stories, and then wherever there's Sasquatch, there's also Dogman. So like when I started learning about that, I'm like, all right, well, fine, let's hear it out. Does this happen in New England? Turns out, yes, it does. So I say we can start from the top with, what is a Dogman and what is this? So one of a very good resource for Dogman info is Dogman Encounters Radio. Well, it's dogmanencounters.com specifically. And reading directly from that site, what is a Dogman? Almost everyone has heard of Sasquatch. Not many people realize, though, a much more terrifying cryptid is stalking the forests of North America and beyond. Of course, I'm talking about Dogman. What is a Dogman? Well, the appellation Dogman describes a group of more than one type of cryptozoological beings that are large and sometimes described as looking as upright canids. Um, Now he goes into there's multiple types. Another type of Dogman, which is commonly referred to as a Type 3, is described as looking like a Sasquatch with a muzzle instead of having a flat face. Eyewitnesses who have had encounters with Type 3 also report seeing claws on the tips of their fingers and toes instead of fingernails and toenails the way a Sasquatch would have. Eyewitnesses who have had Dogman encounters also often report that the one they saw was ambulating bipedally, which is obviously an unusual trait also. So basically, I also think werewolf, and I've learned that there apparently is a difference between a Dogman and a werewolf. Um,
So yeah, no, I was a little surprised to learn how much, how frequent Bigfoot sightings are. There's whole websites and everything devoted to this. There's channels. There's all sorts of stuff on the topic. There's people that have said there's experiments with the Bigfoots funded by the government and all sorts of things you could imagine. People have seen them. People who work directly with them in controlled environments, and yeah, it goes pretty crazy. Again, obviously we're not we don't have to jump into that as well, but I think in keeping with that, to see something of the stature of like the Dogman would be kind of similar, but to say that there's those marked differences. But now, what's the what's the difference between, say, the Dogman as the lore goes and a werewolf?
so it seems that similarly, there are some thoughts or
Werewolf, what?
schools of thought that say that a Dogman is actually like some sort of a government experiment, and it's like some sort of hybrid between like some sort of mix of human and wolf or dog, some sort of combo therein. However, I am going to say like the first documented Dogman encounter was in 1887. I'm not sure if like back in the day that I mean they could have been, but was the government quote unquote, we didn't even have the agencies or military or whatever like we do today. So I don't know about that. Like I mean, if you're trying to make sense of it, I don't know, just throwing that out there. But um and like that dogmen are like actual biological beings that they're some sort of hybrid in some fashion. So like there would be like Dogman puppies that grow into Dogman adults, whereas a werewolf is more like a human that transforms into this creature, right? So I've seen different accounts like um, he, there's I forget offhand, I forget the culture, but oh god, I can't believe I can't remember the culture that people could become werewolves just by eating a certain plant, or witches at the full moon they can become a werewolf, or if
Yeah.
you're bitten by a werewolf, you then become a werewolf. So it's kind of a different origin, if you will, of how one would become. Werewolves are mentioned as far back as ancient Mesopotamia. Ancient Celtic warriors were said to be able to shift into fierce warrior werewolves. In Greek mythology, I'm probably going to butcher this, Lycan of Arcadia tests Zeus's omnipotence by feeding him disguised human remains and is turned into a werewolf as punishment. His name is the root of the term lycanthropy, used for both changing into a werewolf and the delusion of being one, which was a recognized psychiatric condition for several centuries. Ancient Norway, there's a saga that discusses turning into a wolf. This is actually like has been with us for centuries, like for our entire life of humans. There's been talk about humans turning into werewolves. Um, I I had no idea. I mean, did you know that there was a psychiatric condition linked with thinking you're a werewolf?
No, and where does this come up though?
I mean, this is in
And or in specifically in New England, let's say,
well,
if
in
that's acceptable.
it's less applicable to New England as it is to like just the baseline of where this all comes from. Do you know what I mean? So like this has been happening all over Europe in the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries. There were werewolf trials. In 1589 in Germany, a man was actually tortured and burned with his head attached to a wolf-shaped pike and displayed as a warning to stay away from witchcraft.
This is all
Um,
right. So, and what's the link to witchcraft then?
well, I just learned actually by accident that in 16, I believe 1603, King James VI of Scotland was very much involved in these witch. There was a lot of witchcraft trials around that time going on in Scotland. Like there was um, a lot, like a bunch. And I actually learned, if you're an Outlander fan, that a Galus Duncan was involved in these witch trials in the very late 1500s, and is actually apparently the inspiration for the character of Outlander, which I didn't know. But anyway, moving on. So after this took
I'm not
place,
actually familiar with that, but
no, well, you'd have to be an Outlander fan, but turns out she was an actual historic person, and there were some things like that she did in like the real person did and said, in life in the old school Scotland that were actually came out in the show of Outlander, but um, that had to do with witchcraft, but it ultimately prompted King James to write a book called Demonology, which was very what's the word? It was not normal for the time, but he was a very well read, man known for being scholarly, whatever. And so he writes this book, and he talks a lot about. Um, there's a lot, and I'll tell you that I haven't read it. I only just learned about this book, and he talks about black magic and the way that it works, and like how uh, comparisons between magic, sorcery, witchcraft. He has a classification of demons. He's just all of that. Um, James begins the book. The fearful abounding at this time in this country of these detestable slaves of the devil, the witches, or enchanters, hath moved me, beloved reader, to dispatch and post this following treatise of mine. So he talks about, witchcraft a lot, and he does mention witches turning into wolves at the full moon. And this is in 1603 that he wrote this book. And again, I haven't dived crazy into it, but I just thought it was really interesting that this is being talked about again so far back in history. So this brings us roughly to the beginning of America, and we know that there was a lot of witchcraft, at least trials. I'm not sure who was actually practicing witchcraft or not, and how deep that really went in the New World. But today,
talked a bit about that in the last episode, but
in our spectral evidence, so
there was other stuff that went on throughout time in Europe, and apparently that I didn't know about the werewolf trials or even the condition.
No, right? Isn't that nuts? Like I didn't know that was even a thing, but it's very interesting if you think about it. That this has actually been occurring for so long.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in terms of if you were to just say something like witchcraft and how it's viewed socially would be pretty typically throughout time would be deviant from what was the main religion or or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's people that would do that, like that something like that where there's some like fringe interest, or something along those lines of also like cannibalism. We've heard
right.
plenty of instances of that throughout time.
Well, I wonder too if like it seems like these started off as very much like Greek mythology and such, and like Norse and Celtic mythology. So that will bring us to present day New England. And so as I was hearing these Dogman stories from all over the country, all over America, I'm like, well, what about New England? Because I don't care about the rest of the country. I only care about New England. So yes, turns out there are encounter stories from New England. So there are actually some pretty good resources if you're looking. Like I said previously, dogmanencounters.com is a really good resource. He's just got a ton of information on there. And on this website, he's got a I don't know why I keep losing there it is. He has an Dogman sightings map. And what he does on here is he does all over the country, but if you zoom in, you go to the map on the website, you can zoom in to all the places in New England that have either someone's reported a sighting to him, or it's from a different source. Like, they heard it in a podcast somewhere else, or it's a story like, for example, there is a very famous story out of Maine. Is it right here? I'm looking for the Palmyra Dogman. Like if you're looking for
that story's crazy. That story's nuts.
That's a very that's like the story. So that's one resource. Another good resource on YouTube for video producers or podcasts. Tales of the Supernatural is a really good channel, and they have some Dogman stories from New England on there too. And the In Between is also really good. I really like her. But both of those channels talk about New England Dogman encounters. And the terms Dogman and werewolf are often used interchangeably. So, like, just for the sake of this episode, we kind of will use them interchangeably too. Because I imagine if you're like seeing like, if you're walking in the woods or walking anywhere and you just see what you think is a werewolf, I mean, how do you know if it was a werewolf or if it's a Dogman? I mean, I don't know how you would differentiate. So I think just for the sake of continuity, we're just going to use the terms interchangeably. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know what's more terrifying, the idea of some ferocious beast born of blood sacrifice that from some dark spell or something horrifyingly powerful that's made in a government lab, like it's Wolverine or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think true. I think they're equally terrifying in my book. I've just the concept alone, I find very bone chilling. Um, so
Yeah, so let's talk about that Palmyra Maine story because I first read about that and that is fucking crazy.
yeah, it's like one of those stories like it will just things will just keep going wrong for you, you know, like
You're kidding.
so Palmyra, Maine. So yeah, I guess this family moves up there. This is a fairly recent story. I mean, it's as far as I know, 2000 something. Um, they move up to Maine, to this town which is just west of Bangor. So it's up there, but it's not like I don't know, Caribou, Maine, on the darn border of Canada. But it's still it's out there. So they get the house. The father's, I guess, out of work. So I guess he hurt his back. That factors into the story. So I guess they like to sit outside at night. At one point, they started seeing was it eye shine or lights in the field? Like they had a yard surrounding the house, and there was a pond and then forest. So one night, I guess they just saw these creatures in the yard that were like dogs upright, like big wolf dogs upright, and there was a lot of them. I think there was five, and they ran into the house, and the interesting thing about the story is that it's very pointedly pointed out that the guns were all in the barn, locked in the barn, like they had a gun safe in the barn. So
Exactly where you
clearly,
want them should there be some sort of emergency
right?
involving a pack of ravenous werewolf.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so they had their dogs. Their dogs weren't doing anything. I mean, what do you expect their dogs to do? I feel like they said they had poodles, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
I
listen.
mean,
um,
it'd
so
take
they
a big
run.
dog to be a match for that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, most dogs are not taking on a wolf. So here we are. So I guess they ran inside. The father wants to um, get out of there, but the car is parked away from the house. So he tried unsuccessfully to run outside. To run outside to get in the truck to back the truck up to the house, get the family into the truck. But I guess he just kind of did it in a panic. He ran outside. He accidentally set off the motion detector light. When he did that, all of them looked at him and like came towards him. He drops the car keys. He gets in the car, then he backs it up, but then everything was just going wrong. So like or maybe he didn't get in the car, but had to run back to the house. Wife flips out, like, "What are you doing? Just leaving us?" Meanwhile, they're like trying to wake the daughter, and I'm thinking like, you ran outside without preparing your family. Your daughter's still sleeping. How is this logistically going to work? I guess the daughter didn't want to hear it. She wouldn't wake up. So, like, long story short, like, they ended up calling. Um, they called the police. The police said call Fish and Game because it's animals. I think Fish and Game blew them off too. I don't totally remember, but I guess they were prints, but the pictures didn't come out. Like, it was just this whole
Spokesperson for the
insane
Fish and Game Department was quoted as saying, "I don't get paid enough for this bullshit."
shit. Right? Oh my god. And I'm so okay. Like, I'm not making fun of this family. Like, if this really,
Oh no, that's absolutely terrifying.
even if it's like not, even if it was a family of five coyotes that won't leave your house alone, and like you just like they're in your yard and you feel like you're trapped and you can't get out and you're terrified, that's still terrifying. I actually remember when I
5
was
regular
younger.
wolves would be like a pretty big
Right.
deal.
Even dogs, like, dude, my car got jumped on like 2 years ago by like these three dogs in someone's yard. And these dogs jumped on my car and were like, and I was supposed to be getting out. I didn't get out because screw that. But there's three big dogs, like German Shepherd style dogs. Like they're
Whoa.
scratched. My car is still scratched all over, like
Yeah, that's fucking
surrounded. It
shit
was
pisses.
nuts. Like those weren't even dogmen, okay? Like those were just dogs. And I'm like, nope. So like I remember years back, actually, we lived in or no, we didn't live there. I was visiting a friend who lived in Little Compton, and she lived like down this dirt road in this mobile home. So she was like in the sticks, and I slept over. And at night, the coyotes came around in her yard, and they were like circling the house, howling. And like I wasn't from the woods of Little Compton, so like I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with this, and I was terrified. Granted, I was
Yeah.
like 14, but like whatever. They're like laughing at me because I'm like, oh my god, and they're like, it's just the coyotes, and I'm like, I don't give a shit. So if you, I don't even, I don't know, I don't. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, and I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but it just feels like um just wait, there's more. Like there's just something else just kept going wrong,
Yeah.
or like just blundered, or and so that's kind of the big story from Palmyra, Maine. And as it was turned out, I guess um that house they lived in was also very, very haunted, and the people after them also corroborated that it was very haunted. So I guess it was just this all around,
It's pretty
crazy
crazy. I
situation.
wonder. Hmm, I wonder if
Mm.
that's a place you could visit. At least do a drive by. I don't know.
Oh God, I don't know. I've seen like people who on the internet and comment section and such, like talking about they know the family this happened to, and blah blah blah. So I mean, I believe the address is out there. I don't know it offhand, but I don't think it's like a tourist attraction or anything. It's probably private property, but yeah.
Well, yeah.
So there's that story. And that's like when you look up, New England Dogman, that one pops up everywhere. I
Hmm.
mean, it's like the
That one's
main,
that one's the most notable.
yeah, it's the main attraction. All right, so next, moving along to Vermont. So there's this video that I came across years ago in like 2019, and I shared it on Facebook. And actually, it took me quite a while to find it because I couldn't remember what it was called. But it talked about um, this actually. It's called "Hunting the Hound of Cold Hollow," short documentary on Vermont werewolf legend. And it is short. It's like 25 minutes, 24 minutes. You can find it on YouTube. It's actually really good. It's really well done. And when I first saw this, I was just like, oh, well, shocker. Vermont is, I'm not surprised there would be werewolf in Vermont. But when you watch this, what do you call him? I almost said reporter. Um,
Documentarian.
I'm sorry, more noises going on in my house.
Oh, geez. Well,
No, this house is nuts. All right, the freelance journalist goes up to northern Vermont to like look into this alleged legend, or odd happenings, series of unexplained disappearances. And it talks about the legend of a mysterious creature living in the mountains of Vermont, and so he talks to people. He's actually in Montgomery, Sheldon area, up that way, like very north. And this is like right near the Canadian border. And up
okay.
there, it is. I mean, well, most of Vermont is impassable mountain forest, but up there is definitely, it's northern Vermont. It's very.
Why did I hear you saying impassable mountain forest as the dwarf from Lord of the Rings?
It's like Gandalf.
Impassable mountain forest.
That's what it feels like sometimes. Oh my god. So
Northern Vermont.
so basically that's what he does is he goes up there and talks to people and people share their experiences, and some people have had encounters, some people have had they've heard strange howling which they've recorded, they've come across strange books that talk about werewolves or changing into wolves, or men changing into wolves. And it's really interesting that it's very substantial. There's a lot of information in it, in this
Yeah, it was.
documentary.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I watched it, and I mean, to be honest, the howling was definitely chilling, but could it have been just regular wildlife? Um, Likely, I don't know, but yeah, it
I,
was interesting to see that so many people had commentary, so many people had experiences, and there's so
well,
many.
yeah, as it turns out, it's like this is the it's actually for that area. There's actually like a long-term legend, French Canadian Vermont. It's called the Loup Garou. I'm probably saying that wrong because it's probably French. Loup Garou, which is
Oh,
ultimately werewolf. It's the French Canadian, like northern Vermont butts right up to Quebec, so it's like that whole area has had this legend forever. I mean, they even have a name for it. And if you Google Loup Garou, or sometimes it translates as Rougarou, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I guess in there's a 1951 National Geographic article that mentions werewolf activity in Washington County, Vermont. It just it goes it just it's almost like it's common knowledge. Um, so I do want to add about the howling. Um, you hear so we moved here in 6 years ago, and we moved to Vermont. We do not live in a city. Not that there are any cities in Vermont, but I remember I said to my friend something about, well, we'll just do it in the city, and she goes, "What city?" I'm like, "No shit." So, yeah, like Vermont is the capital is. I don't even think that there's like nothing there. There's like a Domino's, a McDonald's, and like a Shaw's, if there even is a McDonald's. Like it's So
yeah,
anyway,
the capital of Vermont is like nothing.
yeah, it's so we came up here from not a big city, but we're from Rhode Island, which is much more populated. It's much more densely populated. So that's where I grew up, and I didn't live in the mountains or in the country. And we moved to the country. We moved to a very farmy town, and
Yeah,
in a valley. At that time, like I've said before, we were on the Connecticut River Valley. Um, and it was definitely an interesting experience because I'll tell you what, I've heard some stuff. I've heard some things making loud noises at night since we've been here. Now some of them I can, all right, well that's a fox, or okay, that's a coyote pack. You could tell they're going through, or that's whatever. That's just some freaking truck brakes on the highway. Okay, but there's been some things we've heard, and I'm not going to tell all of the things because some of them are going to probably go in our Bigfoot episode. But
try to imitate
one,
this. What did they sound like?
well, there's one that I will share now. And I heard this. So when I lived there, I did smoke cigarettes, and I would sit outside, and so my husband also at the time he worked late night, so he worked like a third shift sort of job, and he would get home at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, depending. And I've always kind of been a night owl, so like one of us would always just be up, so it wasn't uncommon for me to sit outside
Yep.
and just smoke cigarettes, because whatever. So I can think of at least twice where I was sitting outside middle of the night. I mean, 2:30 in the morning. There's nobody, nothing going on.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I'm just minding my own business, smoking my cigarette, and all of a sudden, off in the distance, and you could tell when a sound comes from higher, like a higher elevation.
Yeah.
I would hear the sound from a higher elevation because they're loud. It's so loud. So, and I hear this sound that sounds like, if I had to describe it, I would say it sounds like a wolf howl that becomes an elk bugle. So it starts off, and I'm not even going to attempt to duplicate it, okay? But like, just imagine a wolf howl that becomes like, starts off and then ends with a like, I can't even do an elk bugle, but like the elk bugle sound. It's not so, in my mind, that's not a wolf or an elk, because like, what the hell is that? Elk are not indigenous to Vermont or the surrounding area. It's, to my understanding, not a moose either. I mean, it sounds like a wolf and an elk together. So I got nothing. If you have any thoughts, please do tell in the comments below. But
okay, that's pretty weird. Yeah,
it's just odd. It's one of those things. Like, I tried to figure it out, but I couldn't. And we've heard a good amount of random ass, like, what was that sounds. All right, like, and there's been a good amount that we cannot identify. So like, there's a lot of things here. There's there's bear, there's moose, there's deer, there's all sorts of stuff. But like, I don't know. Sometimes in the middle of the night, you do hear things, and you're kind of like, "What was that?" I know what a coyote sounds like. I know what a moose sounds like. I mean, it's is it some kind of a big cat? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. So I'll just add that real quick to the vocalization sound, or vocalization thought. So yeah, so there's that. Yeah, as far as Vermont specifically, there's we've got a local podcast here. It's called the Almost Canon Podcast, and he I saw this post on his Facebook where he talks about Vermont having a good amount of Dogman and werewolf stories, and he discusses the Rougarou on the Canadian border and throughout Vermont history. The same author, Joseph Citro, has a lot of books. Joseph Citro is a local author who writes about things like this, and he records a recent encounter in Vermont Monster Guide, and it was told to him by a woman who was chased through a small northern town while on her way home from work one night by several large wolves with dagger-like teeth and eyes that seems to glow red in the moonlight. I believe this story was also shared on the hunting, or the Hounds of Cold Hollow documentary that we were just talking about.
Yeah, that story was definitely on there.
Yeah,
that was terrifying. She said she couldn't. What got me was she said she couldn't outrun them.
Yeah,
they kept up with where she was going.
Yeah, and that's a common thing you hear in these encounter stories when like they're chasing a car, or they're pacing the car. I mean, that's fast. That's like, cheetah fast. Like, it's like, and I think that's what part of what makes them so scary is that they seem so powerful, and I mean, it's just so unnatural, like,
yeah.
To hell, like regular wolves, like a regular ass wolf is still like not something like, I think I judge people who have like wolf hybrids as pets. I totally do. Yeah, and I think because they're just it's just raw nature. You know what I mean? And like, that's normal. And actually, I don't know if I'll get into the whole story, but I had an encounter with a wolf hybrid in Vermont. Like years back, it almost took out my 5-year-old son. It was a crazy random. All of a sudden, there was this wolf hybrid on the riverbank where we're taking photos. In southern Vermont, it was apparently they're legal here to have wolf hybrids in Vermont. You can have them with a permit, I think. So there's that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And that was just, again,
like, just regular dog breeds are bad enough, And
Right.
with all due respect, disclaimer to the good dog owners out there that, pick up after your dog and train your dog so it doesn't attack people. We're not talking about you, but there's so
Mhm.
many stupid fucking dog owners. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's actually a big
Now
problem.
it's wolf
Well,
hybrid.
again, case in point, this guy, we get to the bridge. We were looking at a covered
This
bridge.
guy who shall
This,
remain nameless.
this guy.
This guy
So,
over
so
here.
we get to the we get to the covered bridge, and this dog or this wolf hybrid is just, and this thing is huge, and it looks like a wolf. It's clearly a wolf hybrid, at least, best case scenario, it's half and
Yeah,
half.
wolves get to about 6 feet, so
Yeah, those things are
pretty big.
just no. So, and it's just wandering
Hard
around. And of course he does it's friendly, she's friendly. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you all fucking say. And we go our separate way. The wolf goes the other way. I turn around to take a
I'll take
picture.
your word for it that the wild fucking
No.
animal is just friendly. Go
Yeah,
find it.
that's fine. No, that's what
That's fine. Yeah. Little kid, wild animal. No,
no. Well, no, this was the thing. Here was the thing. I held my hand out to this wolf and it sniffed it. No big deal. And it wandered off the opposite direction. We went the other way. So this thing went north. We went south on the bank and this thing was gone. It ran off and I was like, all right, well, whatever. No big deal. I go down. I turn around to take a picture. I turn back and this thing is in my child's face, like teeth bared, ears back, out of nowhere, suddenly. And he was like 10 feet away from me. He wasn't, it's not like he was just wandering without me. He was right there. And quickly this thing returned, doubled back and followed us. It was
right. Yeah, that's pretty.
I
cool.
mean,
just to have that closing speed there.
Yeah, and silently, I didn't hear it. I didn't.
Yeah, stealth speed.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a normal, like, legit encounter. Now, he didn't. Nothing happened. He was fine. The dog did not attack. The wolf did not attack. It everything ended well. We were able to jet out of there. But I mean that by itself is just terrifying, and that's a legit just animal. So anything that fast and that smooth, and that powerful, imagine just on two legs, even taller. Like, that's scary as hell. I don't even honestly like talking about Dogman because I just find it scary as fuck. It's one of there's a couple things that I don't like talking about. Aliens is one of them. Dogman is another one. It's too scary. So they say
that's, I don't know. That's
right.
To be honest with you, it sounds a little crazy saying it, but like with all this information out there, it seems like this could very well be a thing. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
context, it's not something I'd want to encounter.
No kidding. So also in the Almost Canon podcast's Facebook post, he talks about how he didn't speak with that witness that tells the story about being chased home.
Is that guy's from Vermont though?
Which one? Almost Canon?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Vermont, local Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah, and he does a lot of good coverage of things, and he's got a lot of episodes. So definitely go check him out, and we hope to talk to him one day. But
I'd like to have him on for sure.
Yeah,
he's got a good podcast. I like his stories.
Yeah, and he I guess he's spoken to other people.
I like his vibe, his energy.
Yeah, he's just a local dude with family and all, and does the same kind of stuff. But I bring this up because I want to elaborate with. I feel like I have a story for everything, which I do, but he says Dogman is he's spoken to others, and it seems that Dogman is fairly active in the Northeast Kingdom, specifically around Silvio Oconti National Fish and Wildlife Refuge, which is an area in the Northeast Kingdom. So if you look at Vermont, that area, like in the top area that kind of juts out over New Hampshire. It's the northeast part of Vermont. It's called the NEK. It's like, there's lots of there's not much there, and it's very lots of wilderness. It's mountainous. It's there's swamps. There's bogs. There's all of it. So we took our honeymoon when my husband and I got married in, oh gosh, 9 years this year, really? 9 years ago. We went to Vermont and we decided we want to try to see moose. So where do we see moose? Northeast Kingdom. So we went up there and we had, it wasn't quite an encounter, but just an interesting thing that happened. We decided to, I don't remember the road right now, but it dropped us on the top of the Sylvia Oconte, because it's a big area, it dropped us at the top of that wildlife refuge in the Northeast Kingdom. I actually want to pull it up on my map just so I can eyeball it. Yeah, it's pretty far up there. The road is, I believe it was in Brighton. $105. Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, it was 105. And we pulled off, like, we just kind of hopped off 105. We were heading east towards New Hampshire, but, like, we were in that general area coming out of, actually, Linden, ultimately. So we just popped off real quick to just take I was like, oh, look, a trailhead. Let's go down it, whatever. And we were like taking photos and like doing the whole nine, like just kind of enjoying like some quiet time in nature. And we get to this path. I don't remember the name of the trail or any of it or, exactly where it was, but it was pretty much a straight path that went down to like a swampy area. Now, we get out of the car, we start walking in, so we're heading due south. And the trail is really just like a pretty narrow trail with trees on either side, and like you can't really see much. Like you're really surrounded by just fairly dense trees. So as we're going down the trail, we start to hear something off to our left. Maybe, I'm not 100% how far away it was, maybe a couple hundred feet. I'm going to just guess that. We didn't see anything, but it sounded big, and it made a fair amount of noise, but it stopped when we stopped walking. So we're heading down. We hear off to the left, just some sort of animal or something in the trees. So, we can hear it all. We can hear the leaves brushing, the twigs snapping, whatever, which is interesting because it was very, very wet where we were. We eventually had to turn around, partially because of this thing in the woods that I have no idea what was starting to make me a little unnerved. Because at first I'm like, oh, it's probably a bear, probably a moose, but like it was pacing us. So we walked in probably, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, I'm guessing, before we had to, it just was too wet to pass. Then we weren't really prepared for, any crazy, swamp hiking. So the entire time it was on our left as we're walking in, and we would stop, it would stop, and we would go and we could hear it, and we're like, what the fuck? Finally, again, we get to an area, and I'm like, you know what, we should let's just turn around. Let's just go back.
Yeah, it's time.
And let's just, it wasn't coming any closer. It wasn't leaving. It was literally pacing us. And, again, could have been a bear, but do bears do that? You know what I mean? Like, we've encountered bear and moose, out there, and they're not, I don't know. Again, I'm not speculating on what it was, but until we got to the car, this happened. So it kind of paced us down and paced us back. Never saw it, never smelled it. All we did was we just heard. So okay, we move along. We go to another down another forest road. I don't remember which, and we ended up driving through just this a forest road, and there was some sort of a campground out there, and We ended up following it all the way out to Maidstone area. So we were in the woods for quite a while, and a thing I kept seeing. Now, this was daytime. It's summertime. There wasn't. I don't remember seeing any people. But what I kept seeing out of the corner of my eye as we're going through forest, we'll stop somewhere and like, take some photos, or we'll get out and look at this, or we'll just driving through. I kept seeing out of the corner of my eye this black shape that was shaped like a wolf. And it wasn't a whole body necessarily, but more just like the head shape. So I'd see this out of the corner of my eye, I'd look over and there'd be nothing there. And I'm like, ultimately I brush it off as just, things happen in the woods, like lights play tricks on you, maybe, or like, maybe you saw sticks standing or trees next to each other in the right way to make it look like, whatever shape. And you look, but every time I would look over, I didn't see that. Like, I didn't see the tree stump, or it didn't, I wear glasses, so, sometimes the light comes in at a certain way, especially if I have plastic frames, and it'll come through and show the color of my frames. But like, I couldn't find a way to explain this. Do you know what I mean? Like, there
Right.
was no way to explain it. It's unexplainable, and I'm just saying this is what happened. So eventually, after like several instances of this occurring, I'm like, I turn to my husband. I'm like, I think I keep seeing wolves. Like, and I know we don't quote unquote have wolves up here, but like it just seemed a little off to me even saying that, because we're not supposed to have wolves in New England. Um, and of course my husband is very good natured. He's very open minded and supportive. So like, he'll never tell me I'm crazy, but like, neither one of us had an answer, and once we left the area, eventually we got out of there. It never happened again. So like, that has never happened again since, and this was 9 years ago. So I just, after reading what he wrote about that in his Facebook post, I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, well, this is what I experienced up there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's anything. I'm just saying this is what I experienced, and I just find it interesting. So I don't know. I I like to think that I'm pretty open minded about things, and I'll listen to anything. And I've had so many, especially I'll be honest, since moving to Vermont, like there's been a lot of, I don't know, weirdness. Weird things have happened. Um, like I said, we're gonna do a Bigfoot episode one day, and I don't know. I got a lot of I don't know what happened experiences to go in there too. So as far as Dogman personally, I don't know. Like, what do you think about Dogman?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. I'm open to things. I don't think that, you know, I'm never a conventional thinking person. Like,
Mm,
so for me to believe in paranormal stuff is, usually going against the grain of what a lot of people would believe.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything personally, so I can't really say.
Right.
But I'm sure, I'm not denying what other people have said. So I'm sure there's something like that out there. I don't. It's not for me to say. You know what I mean? It's like you say, what do you think? But I'm like, I,
I don't know.
I guess it's just like if I don't have a personal line to whatever that thing is, then it's a little tougher for me to say. And it's just like fits in the general category of sure, that's possible.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, again, I've had a lot of weird, just bizarre experiences that run the gamut of like paranormal or not. I will say, since I've lived in Vermont, it's funny, they I don't live in Brattleboro, but I've done research on Brattleboro for the Brattleboro retreat video that we were doing. Um, and there's a mountain in Brattleboro called Wetaskiquit, and it translates to where things get lost, or things like lost in, like there's a bunch of different translations for it, which is funny because even the translation is lost. But there is a very real energy here of like, and I notice it very distinctly because we are not from here, right? So we come from Rhode Island, moved to Vermont, and there's a lot of crazy shit here. It's just different. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know if there's like a you know a quartz line of rock or something that runs through the mountains that just throws everything off. I don't know anything about that, but like there's got to be something because there really is just this aura of weirdness. And I believe it's like there's almost like a border around Vermont. It has its own stuff, this energy, and I have trouble describing it because I have trouble describing it. Like there's some amazing, crazy, awesome things that happen here, and this is a amazing place of healing, and alternative medicine, which I think is amazing. But there's also this really crazy, effed up energy also. Like I've seen things here, I've heard things, and I don't even mean paranormal. I just mean like, are you kidding me? This has to be a joke because it's so crazy. Right? Like so if you
Okay.
if you consider just in normal everyday life things are nuts, I am totally willing to accept that maybe the, French Canadian folklore is true. And that, like, there is a strange creature howling out there in the freaking mountains. I am no longer surprised after my time in Vermont. I will say that much. So do I
Surprised if there wasn't a strange howling.
really? What's what do you mean strange? This happens every day. Is that all you got? I am no longer surprised now. Like, again, there's just we make this joke that before we moved here, we thought it would be boring here. Like it's boring and all it does is snow, but like that's so not the case. I mean, that's a stereotype that we made up ourselves, but we did think it would be boring. It's so not boring. It's just not. There's always something happening. There's it's crazy here. It really is. It's so much more than the flannel and maple syrup log cabin ideal that the tourist ideal. It's really not. It's very different. It's crazy. So if you told me that there's been a upright you know werewolf wandering the countryside for decades, I mean, I'll believe you. I wouldn't be surprised anymore.
Oh my god.
Just one.
So that's it, folks. Another episode wrapped up. We're out here raising man, bear, pig awareness, y'all.